Now, becoming a new mum is challenging at the best of times and even more challenging during a global pandemic, with 55% of Irish mums experiencing the baby blues in their first 3 months, according to parenting community, the Baby Doc Club, which is why it's more important than ever to look after your mental well-being for the benefit of both yourself and indeed your baby.
Thankfully, Dr. Eleanor Galvin joins us live on the line now to discuss Ireland's first maternal mental health week and to chat about their Ask Her Again campaign, which hopes to reduce stigma, raise awareness and encourage mums suffering from postnatal depression to seek help. Good morning to you, Eleanor. Thanks for joining us today. Can I start by asking you, what is postnatal depression and how does it differ from the baby blues?
Postnatal depression typically comes a few weeks after the baby is born. Be tearful, maybe feeling inadequate, not able to sleep, not able to eat. It's a kind of a mixture of exhaustion and hormones, and it presents as a proper depression, feeling sad and feeling quite guilty about it, also feeling as if compared to others you're being a bit judged, and then that makes it again harder for them to come forward and ask for help.
So I suppose a week like this, Eleanor, is more important than ever, given the levels of anxiety. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. And I've mentioned to Laura, and we've had this chat a couple of times over the last few weeks, imagine being pregnant at the moment. It must be quite a terrifying time for all of those mums.
Oh, absolutely terrifying. That said, I've had a few women who've had their babies, and the hospitals are quite nice at the moment. But they go home now to a house where they'll have no visitors and none of that kind of usual community support that they would generally have. And then the days are quite long with the new baby, and the nights can be quite long if you have a baby that's hard to settle. And then there's not so many people popping in to ask them how they are. Everyone may ask them how the baby is and want a picture of the baby, but they may want to actually say, look, I'm finding it hard. There's not that grandparent support either, or those people who would be popping in and emptying your dishwasher for you or giving you a little bit of a dig out. So it can be a very lonely, hard time. And that was what was so interesting about the Baby Doc Club survey, was it was really 1 in 3 were getting postnatal depression at that time. In April they took the survey, which really is a big jump up from 1 in 5, and that is what we are all, I suppose, a bit worried about this year. That kind of populations that will be a little bit forgotten in the middle of COVID, that this sort of illness is still going on, and it's being made worse by the situation we all find ourselves in.
And totally understandable too. Eleanor, do we know what the causes are of postnatal depression, and are perhaps some people more susceptible than others, or is anyone at risk?
Yeah. Well, everybody and anybody's at risk, but I would say that people who have an underlying mental health issue before they get pregnant, you can also get depression while you're pregnant, people who've had a traumatic birth, people who have different expectations to reality of what having a baby is going to be, that therefore maybe they've had a loss already, a pregnancy loss. All those people are more vulnerable. People who don't have a lot of family nearby are very vulnerable. People with breastfeeding issues can be very judgy about themselves, and they can kind of think, well, everyone else can do it, why can't I? And also people who maybe are involved in a lot of social media, that they see an awful lot of very kind of, size 2 mothers just having pushed out triplets kind of images out there, which is very unrealistic, and they don't realise that there's probably an awful lot of Photoshop goes into that. Whereas Baby Doc Club have kind of gathered a whole load of kind of real life mum stories, where people talk about what they how they felt, how they got better, and where they sought help. And they've shown that mothers reading about other mothers having similar is actually helpful. It's not depressing to them. To them, they're able to have somebody say, well, I'm not so alone. I have somebody to identify with. So that kind of people talking about and saying, oh, that happened to me, or that happened to somebody else, or do you know where I got help, or do you know that there's this free counselling service, or you can ring Parent Line, or that they're signposted to help, that really is a helpful thing, and that message will be out there into the houses where people aren't getting out of a lot, and where mums possibly are struggling. It's a huge enough life change to have a new baby, not to mind have a new baby in a pandemic where your husband may have lost his job.
Exactly.
Or you may have nobody at home with you.
Of course, and I think people, new mums, are more honest these days about what they're going through, and that can be very reassuring to realise, oh, that, you know, it's perfectly normal to feel like this. What are the symptoms to look out for in terms of the partner? You know, you've gone through this roller coaster of joy, bringing your newborn baby home. It's all very special. Are there symptoms or triggers that partners can look out for to help mum?
Oh, watch out for them being tearful, that anything sets them off. Low mood, sometimes a bit grouchy, although that can be the tiredness too. Feelings of anxiety and feeling overwhelmed and feeling that they're not good enough and saying, oh, I'm really bad at this, or oh, you're better at changing it, or that sort of thing. Whereas, you know, everyone's muddling through in the beginning. Belief that they're not a good enough mother, that everyone else would do the job better. That is a really big red flag. And also, babies who are hard to settle, generally, the mother is able to sleep once the baby's asleep. But if the baby is actually sleeping and the mother is lying there looking at the ceiling and unable to sleep, that's hormones, that's chemical, that's depression, when you are the one who is not able to sleep, even though you're exhausted. They would be all red flags.
This campaign for Maternal Mental Health Awareness Week, the hashtag, it's very clever, hashtag Ask Her Again. And as Anna said there, for people and loved ones surrounding the new mums, to keep an eye on those triggers. But for mums who feel that they're just not themselves, what do you recommend to them? Presumably, first port of call is to get in touch with GP, because there is help there and they can feel better.
Oh, absolutely. There's loads of help there. And sometimes they talk to their GP, talk to their public health nurse. We're people who interact with them quite regularly during their pregnancy and afterwards. And it is for us to remember it, not to always just say, oh my God, what a cute baby, but to say, how are you? And not just presume just because they got a gorgeous baby that everything is wonderful. And that every time they come into our office, be it for a vaccination or for a checkup, that we say, how are you? And not just take it as, oh, I'm fine. Because quite a lot of people will say, oh, I'm fine, because they find it hard to actually come out with it. Whereas if you probe a little, they will. And it's just not to just leave it at the one shot of, so how's it going? And then move on, that you would ask it again.
How long?
And I think it's a very good point.
It is a very good point, Eleanor. How long, if you are suffering postnatal depression, can you expect it to last for?
The quicker you get help, the quicker it'll be over. So if you got counselling, if you were very unwell, there is medication that is safe to take while you are breastfeeding, which a lot of people are afraid to go on medication in case they can't breastfeed, which feeds into their kind of guilty, not good enough mother. But there are things that you can take if you are that bad. And people can turn it around in a few weeks with help. And sometimes with medication, unfortunately. But just because you come and tell us you're not well doesn't mean you're going to be on medication, or anybody's going to think you're not a good enough mother. There is no such thing. You know, I think that help at home can be very valuable as well. And sometimes it's to go and shake up whoever's at home with them, or shake up a family member and say to yourself, okay, their sister lives down the road. Their sister's really not going anywhere either. You go in and help her. You go in and help her for an hour a day. And that they would have that sort of conversation, that they need the support, they need the rest. And it's very hard to recover from these things when they are exhausted. So that supports will be put in around them.
Brilliant. Great advice, Dr. Eleanor Galvin. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us here on Ireland AM this morning.
No problem.
Thanks, Eleanor. Now, a reminder that if you have been affected by any of the issues we've discussed, you can call Parent Line on 1890 927 277, or indeed you can visit their website. It's parentline.ie.
I'm thinking of all of the new mums this morning as well. Now, after the break, a family meal for four for under a tenner. Simon is up in the kitchen next.